let's start with the approval of our minutes. And hopefully you saw Rachel's second email. We had the wrong minutes on the original agenda, but the correct minutes are on this agenda from our October 22nd meeting. And Rachel has them up on the screen. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes and the agenda for today?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Carolyn, and is that Brian?
No, it's Cameron.
Cameron, thank you. Flits across the screen so quickly, I can't keep track of it all. All right, so the meeting agenda and minutes are approved. Thank you. We're going to start with public comments. I know that we have at least one that was sent to Rachel. So Rachel, if you want to share the public comment you received.
Sure, yeah.
Katie.
So this is about the tree preservation policy, and it wasn't officially submitted as public comment, but I think it does fit here. I just wanted to note for the record, it wasn't submitted like that. And I do.
Oh, sorry, I thought that she did, but.
No. So it was sent in joint collaboration, I think, between Gordon Hanson and Sandy Spanier and possibly other residents. But for the tree preservation policy, it's not on our agenda officially because this was submitted so recently. However, we can talk about it now and return to it under staff reports if necessary. So let me pull this up. I will read this. Yeah, I think, Amanda, I will read the letter I got from Gordon for public comment, and then perhaps we can return to your draft under staff reports or discussion. So I might just share this maybe it'll be easier for people. So I received this email. It's actually from Gordon Hanson, like I said, and we've talked about the tree preservation, work in the past and moving forward. And so he submitted this for your consideration as to the benefits of a tree preservation policy. I can send this out in the recap email for the commission. But I think it just further defines and supports the points that we've talked about as to the benefits of a tree preservation policy. And then in a paragraph at the bottom, he notes that it's a different policy than the tree replacement policy, which we also discussed at a previous meeting. So I think this just further highlights the desire from residents, especially those who are not on the commission, for this work. And as we talk about, the draft letter that Amanda and Carolyn have written to send to the commission, I think we can include this as a part of that packet. So I don't know if I should read the whole thing since we do have a timeline for the meeting that I want to stick to. But again, I will send this out for your reference.
Thanks, Rachel. I think that's just fine if you send it around and then people can read it on their own.
Perfect.
But I also heard from Sandy, who I guess co-wrote this with Gordon, and she copied me on a version of this that they sent to the mayor and the council. And I think the gist of it is basically that they're interested in making sure that A, Richfield has a tree preservation policy, and B, that it goes well beyond being just simply a tree replacement policy.
Right.
Those are the kind of pieces.
Sorry. If you as a commission would like to respond to Gordon and Sandy, we can talk about that as well. Otherwise, I'll obviously relay the message that we've talked about this at the commission. I assume he did mention that he saw that we had talked about this in a previous meeting, so I'm sure he'll see this recording as well. But I'll convey that this is the work that the commission's doing, and obviously it seems like you all are on the same page, and bringing this to council as a resident and commission driven effort, I think is a good step to be at.
Great. Thank you for that, Rachel. And as you mentioned, maybe we can just come back to this topic if there's time under discussion items. Because, as you mentioned, Carolyn and I were working on that letter that we talked about at our last meeting, so we can provide an update on that. And this letter from Sandy and Gordon is valuable, and as is any other feedback that we could get from residents that we can incorporate into the recommendations that we give council. Alrighty. No other public comments, so let's go ahead and move on to staff reports. And this will be the bulk of our meeting, and we're all excited to talk about this issue, organized collection. So Rachel and Amy, if you want to kick us off on that.
All right. So honestly, I feel like I want to do full screen and I don't know if it's going to let me. So can you all still see the presentation? You should be good, right? Perfect. All right. So I'm going to give you a brief overview and kind of bring you all up to speed on this process and how we got here, why we got here, the reasons why we're doing this, the benefits, kind of like organized collection 101. I really want your feedback, your questions, all of that, so that I can, work to make this content better for the entire city and entire community, and really try and simplify this process because it can be confusing in so many ways. So let me just go through it. I wanted to start with what. Yeah, also, you totally can. I can't see any of you, so please just interrupt me.
Okay, this is Laura. Is this presentation on the website, or it will be linked in the minutes or something if people wanted to reference that are watching it later? Okay.
It's currently not on the website. There are a lot of these bits and pieces are in other forms, but this PowerPoint isn't. I can put this PowerPoint up, and it will definitely be available to you all. It's also I can put it on the commission page too.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yep. Okay, so why? I think we all kind of know why, but it doesn't hurt to go over this and really kind of frame the issue. We've talked about it, both staff and residents and council, like everyone kind of talked about it in a variety of forms. And the biggest categories of benefits really being the equity financial benefits, the residential protection benefits, and then the environmental benefits. I think a lot of people think of the environmental benefits first, especially as it relates to trucks, which is very important. But a large part of this is also for the financial piece. So we're going to get into both and kind of go through all of the benefits. It's a super long list, but I think it really shows the strength of the system. And as it comes to protecting residents and ensuring service. So I'll go through all of those black points throughout the next few slides, so I'm not going to spend time on them now. But again, like reasons why. So what you're looking at is a graph of the percentage of recycling throughout the metro. And the years are at the bottom, so you can kind of see going from 1991 to 2017. And the green line at the top is the 2030 goal of 75% that the state legislature set. And you can see, you probably didn't even notice that at first because the blue bars are so far below the green line. And so this includes recycling. It also includes organics recycling. So this is a combined recycling goal. And the metro area is below 50%. And so there really is no realistic way that we can get to 75%. But the goal is to always be doing better. And we know that there's an immense room for improvement, especially as it relates to organics recycling. So we're trying to do our part to contribute to improving that number and reaching that goal. The counties have goals too. Hennepin County, I think, was at 47% last year of a combined recycling rate. The metro rate usually differs 1 or 2%. So anyway, there's these lofty goals, and we're trying to do our part to contribute to those. And another reason why we want to help contribute and improve recycling rates, as you can tell, Richfield kind of really close to the bottom. Sometimes when I edit this slide, it cuts the table off and I can't even see Richfield. That's, not great. We're very down towards the bottom of the county in terms of pounds per household that's recycled. And we know that we throw out a large amount of trash. So it's not just Richfield is producing less trash, therefore it makes sense we're producing less recycling. we produce average or above average amounts of trash, and yet we're still recycling at lower rates. So part of that can be attributed to less consistent education to residents, through our organized system. I don't keep track of the education that each hauler, sends to their customers. So it's hard to kind of coordinate that. There are a lot of other reasons too. So this is a kind of another way that we can, start to move up this list. I think it's important to look towards the future. Obviously, 2020 has been a year where it's just about kind of surviving in the present, but we are always looking to improve our sustainability efforts to provide a better future, right? And so it's important to see that, when that jump in the red, which is the landfill category from 2018 to 2019, and the decrease in orange, which is waste to energy, which is incineration, from 2018 to 2019, it's because a facility closed. So we started landfilling, a waste to energy facility closed. So we started landfilling more, which obviously neither is great, but waste to energy is slightly above landfilling on the waste management hierarchy. So we can see that we have, a long way to go to even bring that landfilling chunk back down to where it was in 2018. And so while we produce more trash, and materials that can be recycled and organics that can be composted and things like that, it's really important to focus on our disposal options and try to reduce the amount that we're generating in the first place, and then make sure that the material that we are disposing of is going to proper channels so we can landfill less even when we do lose facilities. Sorry, Amanda, go ahead.
I was just going to ask a quick question about this graph.
Sure.
Is this total waste? So only that like itty bitty percentage is currently recycled of our total waste in the county, or is that like a baseline? And they're saying in the future we would like to extend that on.
So the 2018 is accurate data, and then obviously the rest of it is at the time that this was created, most of the rest of it was a projection based on per capita growth and waste generation growth, and the lack of having GRE, the facility that was shut down, and using numbers for projections. So obviously, they're projecting what the total waste generation is going to look like, but it is based on, actual data.
Well, I understand that. So basically we only recycle like 2% of the county's waste right now. Is that what that's showing?
It's showing... It's not 2%. I know it's definitely higher than that. I can get, this is, I believe, from an MPCA report. So I can get that original and show it to you. It might also be, I don't know, because I understand what you're saying, and that's exactly what it seems like.
Yeah, and it looks like a fraction of that almost 800,000, whatever it is, tons of waste.
Yeah, let me find the original reports, because I don't want to speak to it and totally misinterpret.
Okay, I was just having trouble.
I know it's not as super low as it portrays
itself. That's not 40%, or 30%, even we're a long way from 75.
Right.
I must be interpreting this differently than.
I don't want to hypothesize. I do have a theory about what this is. If this is just talking about trash in general, and it's saying that that little chunk is stuff that could be recycled or composted. But again, that's like very much speculation, and I don't want to. Let me just find the original and I will show you. I will send it out too. But yeah, it's a great question. But the point still remains the same. Like of the waste that's being generated and disposed, we lost an incineration facility, which is where a lot of material was going, is now going to landfill. Obviously, the goal is to keep stuff out of those facilities, especially landfills. So waste reduction through, having a nice, which promotes better education, kind of gets us to that, or helps us along that path to waste reduction. So similarly to talking about waste reduction, a common fact that I'm sure you all know, especially if you were on the task force, organics being the most common material found in the trash currently. So we're not talking about people who compost. We're not talking about, things like that. But just if you go to an average person's house and look in their trash, you will find that most of what is in their trash is food scraps and non-recyclable papers. So what, we separate for organics. This also talks about what is also found in the trash. And it is of note that a lot of material that's found in the trash can be disposed of in other ways, perhaps not curbside recycling necessarily, but in specialty waste disposal or reuse settings, especially for some of these bulky items. A lot of them can be reused. So it's all about education, and there's a lot of ways to disseminate that information. But it's important to note that by reducing the trash, as we've talked about before, if you reduce what's in your trash, you can reduce your trash cart size, you can save money. So again, getting to that financial aspect. And then, of course, keeping the organics out of the trash, which reduces rotting food and rotting organics, which, as we know, produces methane, a very dangerous and potent greenhouse gas. And so that also ties into those environmental benefits. So getting again to the economic reasons why of pursuing organized collection, the value of services is really important to a lot of people. Obviously, you want to make sure you're getting, good service for your money, and that is sometimes it can be harder for individual residents when you are entering a customer business relationship with a hauler. You are one person or you are one household, and it's very different than when the city is negotiating or working to protect residents as a whole, and has a little bit more leveraging power. So the goal for this in increasing equity and lessening the economic burden for marginalized populations who generally might not have the agency or experience of negotiating contracts or shopping around, or might not have the time to do that, or understand, the deals when a hauler's raising your rates, things like that disproportionately. We have residents in the city who are with the same hauler, and I've seen bills, and one pays $20 a month for trash service and one pays $40 a month with the same hauler, the same cart size. It's really, we have a lot of disparities going on, and, working to provide uniform rates for everyone in the city, and also working to cut down those rates in general through having more efficient routes. If a hauler is servicing every household on a block and, several blocks in the same neighborhood or same area of the city, that makes it more efficient for them, which reduces their costs. And then those savings can be passed along to consumers for a reduced service rate as well. So there are things that, and obviously that can't be achieved through, unless blocks and blocks took it upon themselves to negotiate and contract with the same hauler, which has been done in cities before. It's not unheard of, but obviously it's not super feasible, and that's a lot to take on. So that, improving standardization of service options, making sure that everyone does have access to curbside organics, and doesn't have to go with a specific hauler to have that, or making sure that everyone has access to seasonal yard waste collection or things like that. And then ensuring all residents have proper waste management services. We've had issues with illegal dumping around the city in the past. Certainly not as much as other cities have had, but our parks, staff in our parks, residents in our parks, our public works staff has definitely noticed and had to remove some of these large items, and that's a further added cost to the city. So trying to make sure that everyone, has those proper services, is disposing of their waste appropriately, is recycling appropriately, all of those things, to try and also cut down costs that are also inadvertently passed on through, taxes and things like that. So back to the environmental reasons. We talked about this a lot, so I'll briefly go over them. Obviously fewer trucks reduces pollution. It reduces, this is again a smaller issue, but litter that's blows out of trucks if they're traveling at a fast speed and not everything's caught in the truck or something like that. Improves safety by having trucks traveling at slower speeds down neighborhood streets. I know that's a big concern for a lot of residents. I've heard that from a few residents who, on trash morning, whatever their day is, they don't let their kids play, outside or near the streets, just because they don't always know when all the trucks have gone through, and when they think they're done, there's more. And that's obviously not the best scenario. So by reducing the truck speed and making sure, having trucks stop at every house along a block. It's a lot safer out there. And then a slightly smaller concern for Richfield is reducing roadway impacts. I only say slightly smaller just because our roads are of really, really good quality. So a lot of other cities have to deal with a lot more problems with, road construction and asphalt maintenance and things like that. And we don't necessarily have that, but we do see effects, especially during freeze and thaw cycles. And obviously we know that with, climate change, we see more freeze and thaw cycles throughout the winter. So that, does lead to having more effects with large vehicles on the roads. And obviously those aren't just garbage trucks, but that's what we're talking about today. And then the social and education piece, which to me is really, really important. They're all super important, but one thing that I've always wanted to do is really try and improve on both communication between the city and haulers and residents, and also, education, because, this is a common thing that I get in my position. I'm sure you have all heard this as, people who are interested in the environment, especially with recycling, is just like a lot of confusion around, what's accepted and why certain things, or why plastic bags aren't acceptable in curbside, but they are accepted at stores, and just, like the little things like that. So really being able to improve education around waste reduction, education around recycling and composting, increasing those rates and decreasing contamination. Obviously that benefits the haulers. It reduces pricing of recycling. But it also helps residents, right? It also helps, people feel connected to what they're doing. People feel more, motivated to recycle if it's not confusing, if they're not worried that they're going to do the wrong thing, things like that. The first point with minimized disruption is really it's about the trucks. Obviously, I've also gotten a lot of, feedback about how people who are now, working from home or going to school from home or just anything at home have noticed, the trucks every week. I think that's become more and more prevalent this year. So minimizing the disruption to residents and on that level, but also minimizing the disruption through a transition. If organized collection, from an open collection system to organized collection, a lot of people are hesitant about what that transition entails, and really having a smooth transition to minimize disruption is a key priority in this. And then the others are more on the back end, but it would help. An organized system does help, that government agency work that ties into those graphs that I showed you before. It helps me when I report to the county, all of Richfield's efforts, because I have better communication with the haulers to really focus on, our participation rates and, what we're telling residents to recycle and, the number of bulky items that are being recycled and things like that. So it really does improve that communication, which I know is a frustrating piece for a lot of residents who have interacted with haulers and not been able to get that communication that they've desired or an adequate result to, the problem that they're experiencing. And right now in an open system, there's a limited amount of things that I as staff can do because it is such a private relationship. But by having it organized, there's a lot more that I am made aware of from the haulers and from residents, and can really, bring everyone to the table and, hold haulers accountable for concise and consistent communication, and make sure residents are getting the answers to their questions and their problems resolved and things like that. So increasing public education and awareness and communication is something that is very huge, and I think is becoming more apparent as a benefit to this system. So I'll pause if there are any questions about kind of the reasons why slides before I go into the more of the background. Great. I don't see anybody. Most people I can see are Amy, Carolyn, and Alyssa, and they don't have questions. So
I wanted to make a comment too.
Yeah, Brian.
As a CDL holder, I look at the way that the people are driving a little bit differently. And I definitely second the safety thing. The amount of backing up that they do with those big
Yeah.
vehicles with so many blind spots is really dangerous.
Right. That's a really good point. Amy and I have had, well, when it was warmer, we had outside meetings and would notice in Richfield and would notice the amount of trucks, driving by and stopping at their very specific houses to pick up. And they would stop at one and then, back up to get, one that was like several houses away or something like that. And it's just, it's those not having consistent stops, not stopping at every house on a block, really the efficient routes. And so sometimes, going backwards seems to be more efficient for them. Or if they forget, that there are two houses in the neighborhood that they stop at and they forgot the first ones, then they have to like zoom around the block to get the second. I've noticed that too. And yeah, it is a little alarming at times. So yeah, being able to construct super efficient routes and those that happen at a lower speed is a big priority for residents. And that's one that I've definitely heard a lot. So thank you for that. Okay. Sorry.
Do we know it? It's okay. This is Laura. Would we know if the recycling would still be every other week, or would that change to every week?
That would depend on, that would be something that would be discussed through negotiations, and obviously different rates would be proposed for both services. And it would really depend on what the community wants. I think Edina, for example, when they went out for bid, they have a closed system, but they were looking at every other week or every week for recycling, and they decided to stick with every other for that pricing reason. And that's what their community wanted. But it could definitely be an option. There are other things with recycling, like having an extra cart, which I know isn't, ideal necessarily with space, but there are other things that can be looked at with the services that would have to be ironed out with negotiations.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. And to your point, like that's something that, that's the feedback that as staff and the council, like we want to hear from residents is what are the services that, the community wants. I got it. The very first email I got after this was announced was from a resident who wanted to make sure that organics collection was getting included because he has it now and he doesn't, like this is very important to him. And so really giving me that feedback of what people want to see as well. I've heard people who want an every other week trash option because they don't generate that much trash. So, a smaller cart that gets picked up every other week. They're doing organics. There's no food rotting in there. Those kinds of things. That's all feedback that's really helpful for us to hear as well. So, thanks, Laura. Okay, so kind of switching a little bit from the reasons why to kind of how we got here. A lot of this started, at least for me, when I helped launch the organics drop-off program. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, but if not, the top picture's at Hope Church, the bottom picture's at Wood Lake. These are two sites in the city. They're emptied once a week, and it was a super, super popular program. We launched it and like really quickly, the signups far exceeded our expectations. We, with the task force and there are members of the commission who are on the task force. But I'll speak for myself. Like I knew it was a desired, thing in the community, but I didn't know how desired it was. And so by having, hundreds of households sign up for this, and then we have a little feedback section on the sign up that's, for questions or feedback. And a lot of people are saying, this is great. When are we going to get curbside? Or this is, great in the winter, it's icy. It would be great if it was at my house. I've had people who have told me that they would sign up for this program, but it's not as convenient for them as curbside would be. So they'll participate in curbside organics, but they're not going to participate in the drop off. And I was like, thank you for that. Thank you for that feedback. Obviously I hope you would participate in the drop off, but for me to know that there are people who are willing to separate their organics if they have curbside collection, it's also part of that important feedback. So I think this kind of really opened a lot of staff and council eyes to a service that was desired in the city that wasn't being provided at the scale that a lot of residents wanted. So we launched this and it's been running for about 2 years, actually. I think we launched early to mid-November. And, you know, people still sign up. So that's great. It continues to grow. Yeah, I think that was where it started. And this is kind of a little selection of those comments that I was talking to you about. So I'll just kind of leave this here. And there were people who started the program and then realized, you know, it's not for me in the summer because I have to store my organics to hold on to them, to bring them to the drop off. You know, it would be different if I had to bin outside kind of thing, which, you know, we totally get it. And so that's hopefully, that will be a service that we look to provide to all residents through an organized system as well. So then we went through the process and we put out an RFP for recycling and organics collection, and it was pretty successful. We had several responses, but we did get we did get letters of notice from a group who thought that we should be following the state statute for organized collection. And so that kind of paused the process a little bit while we went to talk to the MPCA and other you know, officials and try and really understand the state statute and what that meant for Richfield, because there are only 2 cities in Hennepin County that aren't organized for recycling, and it's Richfield and Eden Prairie. So everyone else kind of has organized recycling and has kind of been, you know, in the game for a little bit, and no one has really done it recently. So Richfield didn't have a model to follow. And so after we talked to officials, we realized that, you know, it's smart to follow the state statute for organizing trash collection. And if we were going to do that, well, then we brought our options to council and said, you know, here's where the options are. And they told us to go ahead and start researching what organized collection.
Can I interrupt quick?
Yeah. Sorry, Heather.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention you have RFP here, and there might be a lot of people, especially who watch this later, who don't know what that means. That's a request for proposal.
Yep, request for proposals. And that's basically where the city put out, you know, a summary sheet of what they were looking for, and haulers would send in a proposal with proposed rates of providing the service to the city. So thank you. So then we got the go ahead and direction from council to pursue researching organized collection and what that would mean. And so we went from looking at just recycling and organics to all 3. And we realized that it really tied in really well with a lot of what the city had put in the comprehensive plan, and now, of course, also in the climate action plan. But at that time, it was mostly the comprehensive plan and existing resident feedback. And so we realized that it really tied in with equity and affordability, which is huge in the comp plan, sustainability, and quality of life. And so with these, you know, frameworks in mind, we brought all of the research and our presentation back to council at another work session, and really showed them, you know, why this was, you know, tying into, or how this was tying into a lot of the goals that were already outlined in the plan. And we got direction also to put it in the climate action plan, which was, you know, obviously written very recently and had built off of work from the Organics Task Force and this commission as well. And the council had reiterated to us that this was a priority and this was an important project. So it was really, you know, us bringing that information back to them and them reiterating their desire to pursue, you know, considering this and to pursue how the city of Richfield will go through with the organized collection process. So that's how we got to where we are. And as you all know, we had the work session on November 10th. Where council, and then the city council meeting that night, where council officially passed the resolution to consider organized collection, and that started the process. And then the legal notice was published that Thursday, the 12th. And so we have our initial meeting with licensed haulers next Monday, and that will be kind of what is happening right now. It lays the groundwork for the city's priorities. And council priorities and resident priorities for what all of those stakeholders want to see throughout this process and want to see in the draft proposal and things like that. And so that's the initial meeting. It's not technically a negotiation meeting. Those start after. And that's when the city works through the list of things that we want to see in a proposal with haulers, and, you know, goes and does all the back and forth, and hopefully, you know, comes out on the other side with a draft proposal to bring back to the city, to the council and residents and things like that. So in the meantime, when the negotiations are happening, the meetings with haulers are happening, our public education side and engagement side is also happening. And that's where we're continuing to get resident feedback on this, you know, process. And that's what you want to, or you as residents collectively, that's what residents collectively want to see in a contract. Is what they're perhaps nervous about through this organized collection system, and what they want to make sure is prioritized. Or, you know, that's really talking to residents who don't know what this process means, you know, and really clarifying that, for example, the city is not going out for bid. The first step is to negotiate with all haulers in more of a consortium model. I know some people think that this just means that the city is going to go out and get the lowest price from one hauler, and that's going to be the hauler for the whole city. So a lot of it is also clarifying those things. And honestly, a part of my job with the public engagement is also getting feedback from residents who don't necessarily believe in the system, or who have seen perhaps it go a little south in other cities, go a little, you know, negative or something like that. And to say, no, Richfield wants to do it this way, and we're trying to avoid, you know, perhaps, you know, some of the outcomes in other cities, and we're making a public engagement a huge priority in this project for that specific reason. So it's really talking to people who believe in all parts of the system. And I've had a lot of good conversations with residents too. Yeah, Alyssa.
So question for you. So is this process, you know, where it's now like the initial meeting with the haulers, the negotiations, is that also public to residents, or is that just like, will residents be visible to like the negotiation talks piece of it, like what's being discussed?
Negotiations are closed, as that's a very common, that's just legally, they're not, no. The initial meeting to haulers, it will be a special council meeting. And so that will be recorded and visible to, you know, it will be published on the website, and I'll put it on the organized collection page as well. So it'll, like I said, it'll be mostly what we've covered today in terms of priorities that council staff and residents have identified, but obviously it'll be different. All of the haulers will be at that meeting as well. So that one, I'm not sure if it'll be, I don't know if it'll be live or anything, but it will definitely be recorded and available for public viewing. There'll be minutes too, so. Cool. Let's see, I don't know. All right, so public engagement and education. We're trying to do this in a variety of ways. Like I noted at our work session, all these pictures are of in-person public engagement. None of our engagement's going to be in person. It's all virtual. I just, you know, obviously with COVID, that's a given. So we will have 3 listening and learning sessions in December. And that's also more of kind of what this is, honestly. It's part presentation, it's part Q&A, it's part discussion, it's part you know, listening to get feedback. It's part learning about how the process is working. Think open house Q&A kind of thing. There's a frequently asked questions document on the city's website for organized collection, which is the webpage that is also in that bullet point. And I hope that helps a lot of people, because I know there are a lot of questions, and that will constantly be updated. But it's really trying to break down all of the questions that people might have about how the system works, in an effort to kind of, you know, demystify what organized collection means and what it could mean for Richfield. And then we'll continue posting social media posts about recycling education and things that we already do, organics education, that stuff. And then staff availability. Like I said, I've been getting a lot of emails. I try and put my contact information everywhere so that if people hear organized collection, they can also hear and see that my phone number and email are out there. You know, for any feedback and questions. My goal is to have as much communication as possible so that the whole community kind of understands what this process looks like, and, you know, what organized collection means, and the benefits and the reasons why, you know, council has felt so strongly about this, and the reasons why some residents feel so strongly about this, and how we can benefit, you know, the community as a whole. So Then 2021, this process gets or the timeline gets a little iffy just because we're projecting so far into the future, and who knows what the end of the year is going to bring and what next year is going to bring. But public education and engagement will continue ongoing throughout the entirety of the process. And then depending on how long negotiations take, the statute requires a minimum of 60 days, but with the holidays and COVID, it might take longer. Then if a draft proposal is put forward by the haulers and staff brings it to council, there will be a public hearing, and obviously this will be shared with the community as well. A public hearing that city council will hold, and it really kind of goes through what the city has tried to achieve through a proposal, and what this would mean as we get towards the more actual stages and less of a theoretical idea. And so then, assuming that that goes according to all goes well, and feedback is given and incorporated into a proposal for a contract, then approval would come in early spring, probably mid-spring, and ideally looking at implementation, so switching carts, that kind of stuff, in midsummer or early fall. But again, it's so subject to change. So we don't really know the timeline super strongly right now, but as we go through the process, it will become more clear. And that, of course, those will be updates that are brought to both the commission and the community in general. And I believe that is it. So if there are any more questions, I am definitely down to take them.
Thank you, Rachel. Does anyone have any or things they want to discuss related to this? Laura. Sorry, Laura, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying sorry for the background noise if you heard it. My son is running around back here. But I was just curious. I know that in past community Facebook page discussions, people have had to pay for removal of their bins when they switch a hauler. Is that something that can be either negotiated, or do we know if that's going to be an issue? Because it wasn't cheap either.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did talk to other cities to see how this worked when those cities went from open to organized. And what I was told by hauler was that it was worked into the contract. So yeah, there was I know that sometimes there seems to be, especially if you're you as a household are switching from hauler A to hauler B. Yes. And you're choosing to do that. You're responsible, I'm sure, for the charge. But in other cities that I've talked to who have gone through this process, because that was the stressful part. I didn't, want to go through something that would add a further, high cost to a resident. And we were trying to figure that out. And ideally, and I think that this is also something that will be worked through in negotiations, that is not a charge that has been attributed or given to other residents in other cities that have organized. So.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, Laura. I've got my own son in the background noise here. Ben, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to ask, I think some of the comments that I've heard, or some of the questions, and I'm wondering if this would maybe be possible to add to the FAQ, if there is a clear way to say it, or maybe it's unclear because whatever comes up. But I think a lot of folks are interested in what and what are the options that could become available and what are the trade-offs there. I think people hear negotiations and think oh, that's just price. But then a lot of people have appreciated knowing oh, we're it is an option of someone mentioned the every week or every other week, or giving people still the option to get yard waste if they want, but not if they don't. And so I think adding in whether it's in the FAQ or not, just communicating to people that this is not just going to be one size fits all, and that what exactly it ends up looking like is a big part of negotiations. Like obviously negotiations are going to be about price too, but yeah, more than that. So that was one comment I had, and then a question I had. Someone asked me, and I had no idea. Are we able in I mean, if we end up working with the consortium, then it's just everyone, all of the haulers, and it is what it is. Someone was wondering, like, if there's room in negotiations for like considering how the various haulers treat their workers, and if that is, I don't know if we could like expect certain worker protections or certain wages or anything like that. I don't know if that is even within our authority. But certainly when the person who asked was thinking more, if it does come down to a bidding process, can we make sure that someone's not just undercutting the others because they pay their workers less or something like that?
Okay. Ooh, that's a lot. Let me start with the first point about really explaining kind of what goes on in negotiations and making that more public. I think there is a document that I'll be posting on the website that will kind of help answer a lot of these questions, and I'll be putting it up on Monday. It talks about like priorities that the city is looking for. In a proposal and working through haulers, and it's talks about having optional services like yard waste or bulk item pickup or things like that, where it's not, the system is not a one size fits all. Everyone has everything. You have to pay for services you don't use. You have to pay for the largest size cart. It's very much not like that. It's similar to a lot of aspects of an open system, with having different cart sizes, having different services that one can opt in or not. And so this document it talks about the priorities that the city is going to present to the haulers on Monday. And I think that will kind of answer questions for, kind of what goes into, what is talked about at negotiation meetings and things like that. And we can put that in the FAQ as well. So how about, I can circle back with you and the commission after Monday, and we can see if that helps answer those questions. And then with the labor piece, I totally understand how that works, especially in a bidding context. I don't know and don't want to speak about the city's authority in kind of certifying or investigating, I guess, how a hauler treats workers or pays workers or things like that. If that's a priority for residents, there are definitely ways that we can convey that to haulers. I know other cities have done that, but I'm not trying to investigate them or anything. So I don't know how exactly we would figure out the city's position on figuring that out. That might be a question for the city attorney. I don't know. Amy, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, I'd probably defer it to Mary into like fair market wages.
I had a couple of comments and then a question, Rachel. So first, I just wanted to thank Ben for posting in the Ridgefield Facebook group. I think that's good. I think it's helpful to use social media to try to do some of the public education about this, and to also get a little bit of a feel for what people are thinking. I followed that post, and I sent some of the comments that I was seeing on.
I can share that. Actually, sorry, I totally forgot. You can keep going while I pull it up, Amanda.
Yeah, so I think that's good, and I would encourage others, if you're on Facebook or in that group, to do the same. But I certainly don't think that that's the only way that we should be getting public feedback or doing public education. So I'm curious, what are the best ways, or what is the best way that residents can submit feedback for this process, in terms of what they see as the benefits or what they see as the concerns. And then the second question would be, what is the best way that we can engage with the community to help be that bridge between residents and the council on this issue?
Yeah, those are great questions. So I think in terms of how residents can submit feedback, obviously the best way is to me directly, or, you know, another staff member, but I'm trying to be the point person and not overwhelm other staff members. So my contact information, email, and phone number are on the organized collection page, right at the bottom. Maybe I should put them at the top. I don't know. And on every, you know, material that we kind of put out there. And so I do really encourage residents to contact me directly. You know, the community page it's a community page, right? So staff don't necessarily monitor or respond to threads or posts or anything like that on that page. It's very much it's a resident community page. So I am aware of that because you sent me that awesome chart and things like that, and aware because the feedback that, you know, I read in your email it's all feedback that I've been hearing about this process. So I really hope that residents feel like they can and want to submit that feedback to me. I think also the listening and learning sessions are really going to be where we're trying to get feedback from people. Besides that, we're constantly trying to think of new ways. We're sending out a mailer, you know, across the city, and obviously that'll have my contact information and the details for the listening and learning sessions, and really trying to connect with residents every way we can in a virtual, you know, world. Unfortunately, it is harder. We can't do in-person events. We can't necessarily do the traditional outreach that we've done. So we're trying to put things online. We're trying to put them on YouTube, on the cable channel, and really trying to understand how to get that word of mouth out there. So that's kind of also where you all come in. Now that we've kind of gone through Organized Collection 101, and hopefully you have some of your questions answered and a little more clarity on the process. And also, if you haven't checked out the website, you probably should. There's a lot of good information and a lot of good documents on there as well to familiarize yourself with this. And then as you would like to comment, if you are on those platforms and see these questions come up, and direct people to contact me who might not know that the city has a sustainability specialist or things like that. Or, you know, if you see something that someone thinks we're going out for bid right away, and you can just say, you know, actually the process, you know, starts with negotiations with the consortium. You know, I just want residents to be able to get the information in whatever way that they feel comfortable with, and hopefully using the Sustainability Commission, since you all are residents and, you know, have this background and are passionate about sustainability issues, to kind of act as that, you know, somewhat of a go-between in some of these platforms that staff don't interact in. So I don't know if that answers both of your questions, or maybe just none. I hope it answers at least one.
It definitely answers the first one. It sounds like we can direct people straight to you and say, contact please submit a comment to the sustainability coordinator of the city. That's great. You know, and also those listening and learning sessions, we can hype those once we have specific dates and times.
And I will send out details for those, you know, in the next week or so. I also honestly have been telling residents who have contacted me to also contact their council members, so that, you know, staff and council are kind of on the same page with what residents are saying. Thanks, Ben. You know, I don't want to be the only person who's getting this information. It is very important for council to hear everything that residents are telling me, you know, about what they want to see in a proposal, or what they're, you know, perhaps nervous about an organized system or things like that. So those are usually my directions. It's like, talk to me and talk to whoever represents you.
Yeah, and then the second question, I think you answered it too. We can just kind of ourselves try to stay as educated about this topic as possible, and be really familiar with the FAQ, you know, and Rachel's going to expand that as we get more questions and stuff coming in. And then we can just be ambassadors, you know, of information essentially for. Yeah,
and I mean, the whole contact me thing also extends to you guys too. Like, if you ever have questions about, you know, something in the process, or, you know, the whole organized collection system that, you know, I didn't go over well enough, or you're just, you saw a comment and you wanted some clarification, excuse me. Yeah, definitely just like shoot me an email. You all have my contact information, so.
And we'll be recording all the learning and listening sessions, so people can attend them. They can rewatch them, and then, you know, either call Rachel or myself or a council member, or email, and we should be able to answer questions they have. And as Rachel said, we'll put them on the cable access channel. We will have an interpreter there to help translate into Spanish. We can refer to some written things on the website people can reference as we're speaking. So try not to put all of our education, communication stuff in one basket. We're going to try as many different outlets to connect with people, you know, with the challenges of COVID and not being in person. But I also feel like people are so used to this virtual format, we may get more people engaged than ever before, because it's kind of the new norm.
Yeah. And the feedback that I keep, you know, referencing as we're trying to get, it involves, you know, how we can better, you know, engage with residents too. If you all have ideas, or if someone on the community page has ideas and you see those or anything like that, you know, that's definitely something that we're interested in trying to reach as many people as possible. So.
Right. And if you all have things that you're seeing, or someone comes to you specifically, you can pass that on to Rachel too. Especially if it is like a question that maybe can be answered by expanding the FAQ page or something like that, and then it benefits everybody. So I encourage you to do that. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners at this time about this organized process and the steps over the next few months that are coming?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, Cameron.
So as someone who rents, a lot of this is like probably not important to my fellow renters, but you know, for me, when I was looking for an apartment, you know, the one thing I looked into specifically was recycling and how that worked in that unit. So I guess it's like kind of a two-pronged question / comment of like, you know, are we also letting people know that like when they buy a house, like, you know, this is what Richfield offers, or like, is that something that's in consideration if we do move to that? And then the second part is like, are the complexes going to be part of this as well?
That's a great question. So in terms of, will this be, you know, shared information with people if they're moving into Richfield? You know, assuming we get to the stage where we have an organized collection system, yeah, it'll be like, you know, utilities when you call set up. A lot of, honestly, when I was in the office still, I would hear people calling to set up their utilities, and they would ask about trash because they assumed that we were in an organized system, or they would assume that the city was responsible for it. And, you know, my coworker who helps people set up their utilities would be like, no, you have to go to the city's webpage. There are, you know, X number of haulers. You get to choose. And they, you know, like the conversations I would hear were a little funny, but, that would be a thing that was like, yes, you move to this address. This hauler, you know, is responsible for this area. You know, and obviously the details will get sorted out from there. In terms of renting, it's a little different. So it kind of honestly just depends on the size of the building that you live in. So if you're renting a single family house, or if you're renting in a duplex, or, you know, like a smaller building, you usually have a residential collector. And this is something I'm still working the details off of, like who's commercial and who's residential. Usually the larger complexes with, you know, dozens of units or things like that are commercial. They have commercial haulers as opposed to residential haulers. And so this is just licensed residential collection. So we have to figure out where that cutoff is, and that involves looking at code and figuring out what kind of works best for Richfield. But let's just say, I don't think this is your situation, but let's say you're renting a single family house. You're not the property owner, obviously you're renting. This does affect you, however, because you're living in a single family house, you have a residential hauler. So it is important for us to interact and engage with renters too. It's not just the property owners. The people who are living in Richfield who have this trash service, that are renters are just as important. And in some ways, I'm a renter. I don't live in Richfield, but I really understand that, and trying to fight for the trash size that I want, or the services that I want, and communicating with my landlord. And it's definitely not as easy as if I, own the house that I lived in, right? So really trying to, you're like, I get it. Anyway, so really trying to communicate with people, whether they're renters or owners, whether they live in the property that they own or not, and saying, okay, this is a benefit for you as a property owner, and it's also hopefully a benefit for your renter. So, your renter who might want organics collection, but currently doesn't have a hauler who provides that, things like that. So the unit part we will figure out, and that might be also through negotiations. It might just be, the city needs to decide how many, are we going up to buildings with 4 units, really small apartment buildings. We have to figure out who's serviced by commercial haulers, things like that. And that obviously will be communicated to residents as well. But yeah, obviously renters are just important as homeowners. So thanks for your question.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, no problem.
Heather.
Hopefully you can hear me now. I think I just wanted to kind of reply to Cameron here, and I think a big part of the less availability, less demand kind of thing is that it's just not renters just need to be informed about a lot of these things, and it needs to be made available. And so I think that's going to change a lot. But I also know that more recently there's been, a lot of you maybe know Dave Snyder, and he does a lot of good outreach with, lower income housing, as well as looking at non-single family homes, and that's more and more here. And we need to make sure with all of this change that we're enacting, that we're thinking about that, because it's very important to not just not just renters. It's important to every single person. We want renters here who also love Richfield. So,
And that's the piece too. And thank you, Heather. I just wanted to throw in that, hopefully, fingers crossed, that once those residents, if they rent in Richfield, then they can buy their house in Richfield, So it's just like I guess it's like a nice little guiding path for people.
It's almost like we have a community development program to do that.
Right.
I really like the Richfield pride going on here. Ben, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I had a couple more specific questions. I was waiting because I know I already got a whole work session to ask questions and didn't think of these then. But two questions that as I looked closer on the FAQ, I realized I had not fully. I just want to make sure I'm understanding them right. I think one thing I heard a fair amount in the comments on the Facebook post was around the billing process, that there were people who clearly had some said overtly and others reading between the lines a little bit more, but some people who've had some frustrations with the city billing process. And I saw in the FAQ that it sounds like we're actually not thinking anymore about this being part of the utility bill, and that they would get billed directly by whoever their hauler is.
Yeah, so there's so many bits to billing, and this is a long conversation that we've had for a long time. I think for staff capacity, internal staff capacity reasons with the city, for what has worked well in other situations, and haulers are set up to bill residents, right? So the overhaul that would be needed for the city to take that on, and the increase in staff and things like that, it makes the most sense for haulers to directly bill their residents, which is, it's just the common practice for a lot of organized cities. So obviously this is all, could be subject to change with negotiations, but at this point in time, that does seem to be what makes the most sense for the city, and not increasing costs by hiring more staff to help out with utility billing and things like that.
Okay, that's good to know. And then the other question that came up, I had one resident who is like super waste reduction, whatever. Like she said that she and her husband have 2 or even 3 compost piles at their home.
Great.
They create 0 trash, and they like have little enough recycling that they just like deliver that themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was like she was asking about like, do we have to do this? Is there an opt-out process? Right. And then there were other residents who were more of the like absolute like free market choice is my like ultimate priority. Can I opt out for that reason? And I guess I was just curious, there's a FAQ about opting out that sounds like there's like a process that you have to meet like certain qualifications in order to opt out, or like have certain plans in place. And I was just curious if you could say more about that.
I can a little bit. So a lot of that is subject to more, staff discussions and negotiations as well. Zero waste versus hauler choice versus dragging it to a business versus, whatever people's reason that they, don't want trash collection. It's a hard topic to navigate, and it's definitely something that the city's going to figure out. We in code, we require everyone to have trash disposal services or an environmentally sound alternative. Like that's the phrasing in code. And so usually that means that, sometimes people don't produce trash or are dropping it off at a business or something. But we also know that it's a way for people to not necessarily use that system for good. And that's kind of how sometimes we do end up with things like public dumping, right? So obviously I'm not saying that the residents that brought those concerns up to you are doing that, not at all. There are just so many different aspects of this gray area that's, I don't want to participate for X reason. And so that's something that we're gonna have to figure out is an opt-out system and how, strict are those guidelines and what is accepted, and what proof has to, maybe has to be given to ensure that you do have a business that you are dropping trash off and this business is okay with this, those types of things, or you are a zero waster or a, waste reductionist or things like that. When it gets to, I don't want to do this, I want to choose my hauler. In other cities with an opt-out system, I have never seen that is accepted as a reason. And I think that's because the goal of the system is to have many people participate so that the city has that leverage power to get those lower rates for residents. So the more people that opt out, the more it's not organized. So that's not really the goal.
Looks like Rachel's having that internet trouble that she mentioned she might have, but this has been a really good conversation, and I would encourage you all to kind of continue to engage with the community in whatever capacity or opportunity you have to do so, to keep learning what people think, to be able to pass that feedback on, and to be able to, as we talked about, be kind of an ambassador of information. And so try to keep up to date on this topic, attend the, the learning sessions if you can, or maybe that initial council session with the haulers. Keep reading the FAQ. And then Rachel or Amy, when the FAQ is updated, if you could just send that out to this commission so that we can kind of be apprised of any new information that's out there so we can continue to pass that on.
Yep, we can do that.
Great. Thank you. And in the interest of time, too, I think we should kind of move forward while we wait for Rachel to get back. And Amy, maybe you know more about this. The discussion item is around the December meeting, which I see is not on the calendar under item 8. It says our next meeting is in January. So are we canceling the December meeting instead of just moving it up a week?
I think that's on the table to see if the group wants to do that. A lot of commissions, you don't have to, but a lot of commissions do cancel December meetings with the holidays. I can give you the dates of the learning and listening sessions. The first one is December 18th. It's Friday at 7 p.m. The second one is December 19th at 4 p.m. It's a Saturday. And then the third one, I think it's going to be December 22nd, but let me look at my time. Just a second.
Sorry, Amy, I couldn't hear that first one. So if you could repeat that so I can make sure I mention it at the next community service meeting, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay, so now I got them. So yeah, it's December 18th at 7 p.m., December 19th at 4 p.m., and December 22nd at 2 p.m.
Amy, are these sessions all the same? They're just opportunities for anybody to show up and ask questions, and that's why there's 3 back-to-back.
Yeah, we just kind of wanted to spread it out like weekend, day, afternoon, evening, just to try to catch as many people. And then, yeah, like we said, we'll record them if people can't make it. Hopefully they'll be able to view them and provide feedback to Rachel or I.
And how do people get the Zoom link?
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Yeah.
So that information, hi, I'm back. It's going to go out on that mailer that I talked about. It'll also be obviously published on the website, social media. I can email it to people, all the fun stuff. There'll be options to join the meeting on like your laptop or computer. Also an option to call in. Really trying to get all of the engagement. So sorry. I will also get better internet for the listening and learning sessions.
Well, thank you for that.
Very frustrating.
Thank you for that, Amy.
I was just giving them those dates, Rachel, for the 3 learning and listening sessions. And then we were just talking about if we were going to have a December meeting.
Oh, that's great. So technically bylaws say no. And also the calendar says, I think Christmas Eve. So I guess I don't know if we wanted a December meeting, if we can just say, yes, we are not going with the bylaws, or if we are.
The bylaws just said no July meeting. Is it July
and December? Because December is always, well, not all. Yes, always. I don't know how holidays work. Anyway, I'm pretty sure because I checked. I'm pretty sure it's July and December.
Okay. Well, if that's in the bylaws, then we can follow the bylaws.
Yeah, it's a little weird now that we have a project that's like right in the middle of this. It's like, oh, dang.
Well, there will certainly be those learning and listening sessions right around the time that we would have a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that we wouldn't have the time as a commission to kind of talk, but we would have the opportunity to engage in the issue. Does that feel sufficient to people, or do you think we should have maybe like a special meeting in December because we have this active project going on? Do people have any thoughts on that?
Personally, I think it would be fine to move our December opportunity to January.
Not that it matters. Jeremy signed off on his email, see you in January. So I think that's his contribution. He also would say that. I don't know.
I think if something comes up where we think it's really pertinent, we check in with the commission, we could call like a special meeting or something like that.
Sure.
That's really critical.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of head nods, so I think that's amenable to people.
Mm-hmm.
And then just the other quick discussion item that I wanted to throw in there, just really briefly, because we're short on time. especially since we won't be meeting again until January. But at our last meeting, we did talk a little bit about submitting a letter to council about a tree preservation policy. And between the comments that you all made in that last meeting and that feedback that Rachel got from Sandy and Gordon, like Rachel mentioned, we kind of drafted like a draft letter, basically with some of that stuff. And what I would ask is just that Rachel send that around to you all after this meeting, and for you all to take a look at that and provide feedback on that letter.
The feedback to Amanda directly if you want.
Yeah, you can send that to me directly. I think we found out from Rachel that it's okay to have those sort of like really
direct
emails,
just the direct ones,
back and forth conversations.
Yeah, so we talked to update everybody on like the open meeting stuff. I did check with the city attorney, and as long as either like it's a very direct thing, like Amanda might remind you, let's just say she reminded you we had a meeting or something, which is something I would do, but you know, whatever. Or, you know, she's asking for feedback on this letter, as long as, you know, it's not a group discussion, we're not talking about policy that would be talked about during a meeting. You know, if you as an individual are sending Amanda feedback on a letter, it is okay. So I will copy Amanda when I send this out. So hers will be the only address that you see, and then you can send her your feedback. All right, there we go.
Yeah, so please do that. You know, especially the bulleted part, like it's just a list of kind of ideas of what we think should maybe go in this tree preservation policy. Obviously, this organics waste is the big topic we're working on right now, but it's good to have more than one project. So please take a look at that, provide feedback. Carolyn, please do the same. Sue and I were kind of working on that.
Yeah.
I'll send Gordon's letter out too. Gordon and Sandy's letter in the same email.
Yeah, great. So that's all I wanted to say for that. And that's sort of the only action item that I have had to is like provide some feedback on that. Other than just, you know, to stay engaged with this organized waste discussion as much as possible. Let's have a quick report from Heather, for Community Services Commission.
Thanks, guys. Let me pull my notes up here from that one. So Amy, feel free to jump in with any other updates, but I'll just cover a few things. So the biggest things, I know we're short on time, so I'll kind of try to make this short and sweet. The biggest things for updates, I think, are, you know, winter rec programs, which we were looking forward to trying to get some going, limited, of course, but those are going to be halted now with the COVID numbers increasing and hitting Richfield pretty hard. That's what was decided. So so there's that. You know, hopefully after winter that can be reassessed, but we will see. Virtual activities are being planned, so it sounds like there will be some cool ones coming up, so keep an eye out on those. Our meeting was on Tuesday, so it was, you know, the day before the governor announced more closures, so kind of right in line with all of that stuff. So basically the city's just going to err on the side of safety, which tends to be, you know, safer decision. So anyway. Let's see here. They are hoping to be able to do ice rinks, but there will not be warming houses. We had a couple motions. One was about round up at the liquor stores. So, you know, oftentimes when you go to one of the Richfield liquor stores, you can round up, you know, your dollar, and that is that's funds that we're able to use. So there were a lot of park updates this year, and that really helped us be able to do that. So just keep that in mind when you're buying your holiday wine. We canceled our December meeting. That was the other motion that we had. The last thing that we talked about was doing a holiday food drive. So we've decided we're gonna work with the city and push a Richfield holiday food drive, letting you know, people in the city volunteer to be drop-off sites, since we're very limited with these times and, you know, places we can go and safely host a food drive or something like that. We're going to let people volunteer. You guys, if you're social media stuff, like it, promote it, donate food. We don't know what our goal is yet, but we will. And we're hoping that, you know, the city really shows up. A lot of people are having a hard time, you know, so let's show up and if we can and help them out. So yeah.
It is going to be. Yep.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're partnering with Veep, which makes it really easy to do. So yeah. Did I miss anything, Amy?
I don't think so. The food drive's going to be December 1st through the 18th. And then we'll get the, you know, if people are interested, we'll get all the information out next week, how they can sign up to be an official house that, you know, has a container and collecting food. And we'll make a map of all the sites in Richfield that are involved. It can be a business, it can be a house. We'll be collecting food throughout it at the community center. We'll have some dates people can bring their bin and we'll collect all the food. I think it'll be cool to see how much we can get as a community, especially you know, this time of year. I think the other nice thing we have planned for the week ahead is we if you're interested and you're in, hopefully you're all in town, we're doing a gratitude walk at Richfield Lake. So it's a 1 mile loop. You can access it you know, over by Pizza Luce or the co-op, and you can jump on the trail and walk around Richfield Lake, and it's a mindfulness journey just for people to reflect challenges everyone has. So
you
we're
skipped
kind of
a little
excited
there, Amy.
Oh,
I thought
sorry.
it was me.
It's a mindfulness journey, a gratitude walk at Richfield Lake, and that's going to go out next Monday, and we'll have it around the lake for a week. So people can walk. It's a 1 mile loop and just reflect on things that they're grateful for, despite all the challenges everyone's facing right now. So get some fresh air and get out there and enjoy. We're planning a ton of fun stuff though. We just lined up a Santa Claus. We're going to do some virtual story time with Santa Claus for kids. We're going to have virtual children's yoga sessions they can go to for free. We'll of course have ski and snowshoe rental once we get some snow, get that going at Wood Lake. We're looking at doing a luminary solstice walk. So I think we're going to, you know, come up with a lot of fun and safe activities in the coming weeks just to keep people engaged mentally and physically and keep people's spirits up.
Yeah, it does sound like you guys are doing a lot, and I just want to kind of take a quick, I know we've, you know, it's 8:30, but I just want to take a really, you know, quick side note here to just thank Amy and the team, because I think that the Parks and Rec people have been through the ringer this year, you know, trying to figure out ways to give people what they want and safely, and, you know, loosening things and then restricting them again. And so I think, you know, a lot of these things that are virtual are going to be really good and exciting, and they're working really hard on them. So, you know, if you guys see that stuff, try to go if you're able. And
yeah, we have a book club that we're going to be getting back to. So if you're a reader, we have some great books that we'll be reading. So lots of good, safe ways to stay engaged.
That all sounds very lovely. I remember seeing the hidden animal walk that you set up in Wood Lake a few months ago. It's very fun. I never did find one of them. You stumped me. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. So no December meeting. We'll see you all in January, but hopefully we'll see you before then in some of these other listening sessions and such that we have coming up with Organized Hollins. So any other questions or comments from folks for the good of the order? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Cameron? Yep. Do I have a second? Melissa, thank you. All right. We're adjourned at 8:32. Wish everyone happy and safe holidays.